Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Good Monday morning, Teresa Tomeo coming to you from, as we've been discussing the last couple of days, the Grand Hotel on beautiful Mackinac Island, just above northern Lower Michigan in the stunning Straits of Mackinac. We have close to 400 people who gathered here for the annual Grand Hotel Getaway with amazing guests and speakers from all over the country. Our guests come from as far away as Texas and California and as close as Ohio and parts of Michigan. It's great to see so many people from all over the country, including Missouri as well and Indiana. I've met so many people, wonderful people who are here for the first time. Now, best laid plans. I remember I was talking about we were going to go live this morning, as we always do, as we've been doing for many years, but there's some internet issues this morning. So I do want to let you know that we are going to proceed with recording all of our wonderful speakers. We are going to be interviewing Father Michael Schmitz, Steve Ray, Father Leo Pedlinghug, and of course, Dr. Edward Shree, all of whom are speaking here today for the conference, and it'll be wrapping up tomorrow morning. And then what we'll do is we will bring you these fresh, terrific interviews at a later date. But unfortunately, because technology is great when it works, we are going to go to a best of program. We still have the news and weather for you, though, of course, giving you the latest news of today. But we will tell you more about the Grand Hotel Getaway in a very near future show. So here we go on a Monday morning. Let's see what's happening first with the weather. Wildfire smoke from Canada continues to result in poor air quality from the upper Midwest into the Northeast. Dangerous heat and fire weather concerns continue for portions of the Four Corners region into the central Great Basin, and heavy rainfall and flash flooding are possible throughout the day today for the southeast part of the country. Right now, let's take a look at the news here on a Monday morning at just a few minutes past the hour. During the Mass for the Jubilee of Young People near Rome on Sunday, the Holy Father telling them that Jesus is their hope and encouraged them to adventure with him throughout their life and let him enlighten them. He acknowledged that there's a burning question in their hearts, a need for truth that cannot be ignored, leading us to ask ourselves, he said, what is true happiness? What is the true meaning of life? What can free us from being trapped in meaningless boredom and mediocrity? In recent days, the Holy Father also recalled the young people have had many beautiful experiences, adding that through all of this, you can grasp an important point. Namely, the fullness of our existence does not depend on what we store up, or as we heard in the Gospel, on what we possess. He added, aspire to great things, to holiness wherever you are. Do not settle for less. You will then see the light of the Gospel growing every day in you and around you. An estimated 1 million young people gathering near Rome for the Jubilee of Youth prayer vigil and for the overall Jubilee of Youth. Meanwhile, Thaddeus Jones from Vatican News tells us at the conclusion of the closing Mass for the Jubilee of Youth, the Holy Father remembered young people suffering the most serious evils caused by other human beings, mentioning specifically war-torn Gaza, Ukraine, and every land bloodied by war.
Just before the conclusion of the closing Mass of the Jubilee of Young People at Rome's Tor Vergata Field, Pope Leo expressed his closeness and solidarity with young people suffering in Gaza, Ukraine, and all living in war-torn parts of the world.
In communion with Christ, our peace and hope for the world, we are closer than ever to young people who suffer the most serious evils, which are caused by other human beings. We are with the young people of Gaza. We are with the young people of Ukraine, with those of every land bloodied by war. My young brothers and sisters, you are the sign that a different world is possible, a world of fraternity and friendship, where conflicts are not resolved with weapons, but with dialogue.
The Pope also yesterday announcing the dates of the next World Youth Day to be held in Seoul, South Korea, August 3rd through 8th, 2027. He said after this Jubilee, the pilgrimage of hope of young people continues and will take us to Asia. He said in a message before praying the Angelus at the University of Rome, 10 miles east of Rome, where he had just celebrated Mass for 1 million participants from 146 countries. In other news, a manhunt continues in Montana for a suspect who gunned down 4 people in a bar. Police say 45-year-old Michael Brown is still on the loose after killing 4 people in the small mountain town of Anaconda. Authorities have found what they believe is his abandoned vehicle west of town. Police in the southwest part of the state are urging people to remain on high alert. And the White House economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, is explaining President Trump's move to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this following a weak jobs report. In an interview with Meet the Press over the weekend, he echoed statements made by the president questioning the accuracy of those numbers.
There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder, and I think the most important thing for people to know is that it's the president's highest priority that the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable.
The report said the economy added just 73,000 jobs last month, which is well below estimates. Trump taking to social media, implying the labor statistics chief manipulated the information for political purposes. The Trump administration launching a probe against former special counsel Jack Smith. Smith prosecuted 2 cases against Trump, one centering around allegations that Trump tried to subvert the 2020 election, another accusing him of mishandling classified documents. Neither went to trial, and Smith resigned from the Justice Department shortly before Trump was inaugurated. Meanwhile, the president and the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, are set to speak in the coming days. That, according to Canadian Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who told CBS's Face the Nation that he's optimistic the 2 countries can reach a deal to reduce tariffs.
We think there is an option of striking a deal that will bring down some of these tariffs, provide greater certainty to investment.
His comments come after the president decided to raise tariffs to 35% on Canada following weeks of negotiations. The president citing the fentanyl crisis as a reason for the tariff hike, and he also mentioned Carney's efforts to recognize a Palestinian state was jeopardizing those talks. Jim Forbes tells us Jeanine Pirro is confirmed as the next U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia.
On Saturday, the Senate voted 50-45 to confirm Pirro to the position. Pirro was previously serving on an acting basis since May after President Trump withdrew his first nominee, Ed Martin, whose nomination faltered amid bipartisan backlash. She has previously served as both a judge and a district attorney in New York before co-hosting The Five on Fox News. I'm Jim Forbes.
And meanwhile, the feds are warning corporate America to do their due diligence to avoid worker fraud. The district attorney for Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, discussing a case earlier last week involving an Arizona woman who helped hundreds of North Korean IT workers illegally get remote jobs at American companies.
This is a code red. Your tech sectors are being infiltrated by North Korea.
She said that Christina Chapman enabled the network of North Korean workers to generate $17 million in revenue that went all the way back to North Korea. She went on to say it's time for businesses to verify their workers before security of the country is compromised. Almost 60% of millennials and Gen Zers blame their social life for hurting their financial goals. A new survey also found that 42% of them report overspending on their social budget several months out of the year. A survey also revealing that most American adults covet social time, with nearly 70% saying they meet with friends in person at least once a week. On average, they spend $250 a month on social activities. Fewer than 1 in 5 say they have a strict budget for activities with friends. And Sarah Lee Kessler tells us the Federal Trade Commission is warning consumers about a scam involving Amazon.
It actually has nothing to do with the international e-commerce company, but with fraudsters trying to make it look legit. They're sending phony text messages claiming to be from Amazon, saying an item you bought has been recalled. The FTC says don't fall for it. Don't click on the link offering a full refund, or you could be ripped off by scammers who are after your money and personal data. I'm Sarah Lee Kessler.
And there's a major wildfire still raging in central Utah after nearly 3 weeks. Officials say the Monroe Canyon fire began on July 13th and has grown now to some 57,000 acres. Crews on the ground and tanker aircraft have helped slow the spread, but the blaze is less than 5% contained. Local evacuation orders lifted on Friday, although the state of emergency declared by the governor is still in effect. And finally, in our newscast on a Monday morning, Rob Martio tells us a theme park made famous by its A-list celebrity co-founder hitting the top spot on TripAdvisor's 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards.
Dollywood, the park co-founded by country music icon Dolly Parton, placed highest in the Best Amusement Park category. Dollywood beat out Disney World's Magic Kingdom, Disneyland, and Universal Studios on the 2025 list. TripAdvisor says the ranking is decided by above and beyond reviews and opinions from the TripAdvisor community over a 12-month period. When it comes to the best theme parks globally, Dollywood comes in at number 11 on the list. The number one theme park on the face of the planet, Ferrari World, Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. I'm Rob Martier.
It's a Monday morning, and we are still here at the Grand Hotel, but stay tuned for some more great programming on a Monday. We'll be right back. Minutes past the hour on a Tuesday morning, the Feast of St. Mary Magdalene. Pray for us. More on that beautiful saint in the next hour of Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio Extra. First, though, many years ago, one of the TV stations where I worked in Metro Detroit, WKBD Channel 50, worked for the 10 o'clock news there. It was my first TV job after switching over from radio for many years. We had a big sign in our news garage where we kept all the live trucks, and we would see it every morning. We went out to get in the live trucks and go cover a story. We would see it every night when we came home, back to the station to file our reports. And it said, the reporter is not the story. And that was placed there very specifically to remind us that it's not about us. We are the messengers. We put it out there. We let the people decide. Okay? Unfortunately, that is no longer the case and hasn't been for some time. Vanessa Denha-Garmo, of course, from Epiphany and Ave Maria Radio joins me, and she is a business coach, and she is a fellow media expert. And V, why is it important, do you think, for us to share these types of stories with our listeners, and one we're going to talk about specifically this morning?
Because people have to understand what kind of information they're consuming, and they have to differentiate between journalism and activism because it's so blurry today. You know, we did not see this when we were reporters, and no, you were never the story, and you never gave your opinion. You went in there objectively and just covered the facts. And all the story tells me is that this guy has no business being a journalist because he made it about himself. I mean, there are so many things going on there that day, T, that you looking at somebody's eyes is the least of your concern.
Let's play the clip first, so people. So we're talking about the shooting of then presidential candidate Donald Trump, Republican presidential candidate.
Yeah.
This is Butler, Pennsylvania, last summer, where one man was killed, a precious life was taken, the police officer, others were hurt. President Trump, of course, suffering, thanks be to God, minor injuries. And we would say that for anybody who was in that situation, whether they be Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
But there was craziness, chaos. And when you're covering a story like that, you shouldn't be thinking about yourself. You're thinking you should go into autopilot, right, V, about what you should be thinking about in terms of filing a report. If you're going to be going live and the candidate has just gotten shot, that is a huge, huge story. Well, let's roll the clip. And this is a CBS reporter talking to Chuck Todd on a podcast. The guy's last name, his first name escapes me, but McFarland, I believe, is his last name. Talking about how this was all about him and the future of America, which he says was so evident at this rally last year. And roll it, Richard, please.
An immediate or even a long-term reflection on Secret Service. For those of us there, it was such a horror because you saw an emerging America. And it wasn't the shooting, Chuck. I got diagnosed with PTSD within 48 hours. I got put on trauma leave, not because I think of the shooting, but because you saw it in the eyes, the reaction of the people. They were coming for us. If he didn't jump up with his fist, they were going to come kill us.
I know. I'll tell you.
Break.
Scott McFarland is the reporter. I know. Now, here's the thing.
Wait, let's stop for 1 second, T. Don't you think that people were scared themselves? Did that ever cross your mind?
Yes. So, but first of all, when you're a reporter, you're in a situation like a breaking story, okay? He's sent there to cover a rally of the presidential candidate, the Republican candidate, and so you are keenly, or should be keenly aware of your surroundings, okay? Fine. A shooting. Is there one shooter? Is there two shooter? How many people are hurt? What's going on with the candidate? He's down, obviously. You see blood. And instead, what is he worried about? From what does he get PTSD? People looking at him meanly. Yeah. And this is a thing that we were talking about this before we hit the air live. This shows, as you said, V, that he's not qualified because it is all about him. It is all about an agenda. What is the agenda? Anybody who supports President Trump or showed up at a rally
are evil, horrible
They're evil,
people.
They're mean, they want to come after the press.
Yeah.
It's always about this deflection of they cannot look at this is the story is not you. And yet he made it all about him.
I remember I was covering a barricaded gunman story at the time. Napoleon, Benny Napoleon was the police chief, and we were all there. You might have been there. Who knows?
Yeah.
And it was a ton of us, right? We were all there. This guy had these couple kids holed up at his house, and he started shooting at the cops. I got so close. I remember a police officer came up to me and she said, "Girl, you got a death wish? Get out of here." Mm-hmm. I was so entrenched in the story trying to figure out what was going on. I forgot about myself. I forgot that I was actually in danger because I was trying so hard to figure out what was happening so I could report it back to my station. When you're a reporter, you do have to think about your surroundings, yes, but you're so entrenched in what's going on, what the public needs to know to report the story accurately. I'm not looking at somebody's eyes. He made this all about himself, and I don't think he is qualified whatsoever to be a journalist. I mean, and then to try to change it to say we should be hating those people because they looked at me wrong. That's who we should be hating, not the shooter, not the people that are trying to kill the president of the United States. I mean, everybody there was in danger. We have, you know what I mean? You don't know what's going on. You don't know how many shooters there were. You didn't know if he was killed, if he was going to continue. I mean, that's the story, is that everybody there is in danger, not you being threatened by somebody's eyes looking at you the wrong way.
And a year later, he's still talking about himself. He's not talking about the lack of security that obviously happened and how we now know that the Secret Service did not have the support they needed. They asked for more support. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
They're not looking at those types, that type of angle in terms of the story. How did this happen? And what about this gunman? We still don't know why he had all these accounts overseas and what was going on. There are so many questions about what happened that day. In addition to, obviously, the loss of life of that poor police officer who lost his life there. I mean, it is just unbelievable to me. But then again, maybe not, that this person could sit there and still a year later talk about, well, no, we have to address the fact that this is the emerging America because they looked meanly at me.
And not only that, look how he made a point to say it wasn't the shooting that gave me PTSD. Really? Because every other person the shooting would have given them PTSD.
Right.
Not the way somebody looked at them. I mean, are you really, he's making a point to say, no, it wasn't the shooting that caused me this. It was the way people were looking at me, because they want to change the narrative that majority of Americans who voted this man into office are the problem, not us. It's the majority of the Americans, because he wouldn't be the president if he didn't win the electoral vote and he did win the popular vote. So you're claiming that majority of Americans are the problem in this country, this emerging America, not the fact that people are trying to kill the president of the United States and putting everybody else there at risk in harm's way.
And this goes to our point at the beginning of the conversation that we have to be aware, because it is about now advocacy and activism. This is a totally activist statement in terms of this is an emerging
100%.
America. According to whom?
That's
Who
your
are you?
opinion. Yeah. That is your opinion. You're trying to plant that seed in the minds of people so you can continue to create divisiveness in this country. And it's such hypocrisy, because you claim to come from the party of unity and inclusivity, but it's constant comments of dividing us. And you as a reporter shouldn't even be making those claims.
Right.
You know, that is not your job to give that opinion.
It's so out of control now. And you think of the fact that there would be a legitimate case, V, and you and I could say this, or all the crazy stories working in Detroit, a big city which has a lot of crime. How many times, as you said, you were in that situation. I remember I was telling this to Richard, my producer. I remember when I did that investigative report on the former mayor of the city of Warren, a suburb in Detroit.
Oh, yeah, you won an award. That was an excellent story. I remember that. I remember calling you and telling you, T, what a great job on that story.
So we were covering one of his campaign events, and Warren is a very big suburb in southeastern Michigan.
Yeah.
And I was in the live truck, in the Channel 7 live truck. Well, his supporters are so angry with me, V. They came, and about 10 of them surrounded the Channel 7 truck and started to rock the truck and threaten us.
Happened to me.
They had guns and everything else.
Yeah.
And then think about all the other types of things that we've covered.
Yeah.
Now, those types of situations, or I covered the Oklahoma City bombing and sat right behind Timothy McVeigh when he was getting arraigned. I mean, now but being there in the presence of such evil, those kinds of things, it's legitimate. They actually now have a program for reporters to go to when there's legitimate PTSD in terms of the trauma you see, in terms of the death, in terms of the violence, all that kind of stuff. But to sit there and say during that huge story, it's all about me because people are looking at me meanly. That is so self-centered.
Yeah.
And that is total activism and advocacy and not journalism.
And total disregard to the people who truly suffered there.
Exactly.
Like the family who lost their husband and father.
Right, and father. Yeah. Be great discussion. Mm-hmm. Have a great show today. Vanessa Denha-Garmo talking about the media. We need to know, as Archbishop Chaput always says, how the media work so they don't work on us. And they sure are trying, let me tell you. We'll be right back. St. Bonaventure, pray for us. It is Tuesday, July 15th, the feast day of the Angelic Doctor from Central Italy. Kelsey Reinhardt is on the phone with us this morning. She's the head of Catholic Vote, another wonderful organization that is out there defending our Catholic faith and freedoms, religious freedom. They do such a great job. Gosh, Kelsey, I know there's so much to talk about, but let's start with what's happening with the latest information and review on the abortion pill, Mifepristone. And then I have so many questions for you on that, but other issues. Thanks for joining us this morning. What's the latest with the review of the information on the abortion pill?
Well, the latest is that it's in the hands of the FDA Commissioner, Dr. Marty Makary, and we're very hopeful that there will be a rollback on what has been a sort of very loose policy implemented after COVID and during the Biden administration. But I think it's worth taking a look at the entire history of Mifepristone, of the abortion pill, to really see how absolutely politicized this medicine has been. And I'd love to go through that with you, Teresa.
Sure, go ahead. Very interested to hear it.
So, I don't know that most people know that Mifepristone was actually Planned Parenthood's idea to privatize abortion, to make it a do-it-yourself procedure at home. They began working on this and it was first synthesized in France in 1980 because they understood that the spread of abortion clinics, which had become popular after Roe versus Wade, were actually becoming increasingly unpopular. And so they thought that the legal tide was turning against Roe, which, as we know in Dobbs, did happen. And so they thought, if we can find a way to privatize abortion and make it a do-at-home procedure, it would keep this industry afloat. And so in 1998, only France and communist China had approved it. And this alone should give us pause.
Hello. Right?
Yes, exactly. In 1989, the FDA banned Mifepristone from being imported to the U.S., so there's historical precedence for this being banned. And then in 1993, President Clinton told the FDA to take another look, and by 2000, under pressure from the abortion lobby and still under Clinton, the FDA approved it. So I think we have to look at the politicization of this drug from the very beginning. It was understood to be very dangerous, and by 2011, just 11 years after the FDA had approved it, they had to implement a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, or REMS for short. And that meant you had to go to a hospital or clinic to get it. 3 medical visits were required. And in some states, the doctor actually had to be physically present when the woman took the pill.
Well, that makes sense because it's so strong and it's so dangerous. I mean, of course. And now it's just, get it through the mail. Get it wherever over the. This is insane if they're so concerned about reproductive health, right?
And you're right, Teresa. That's what the EPP, the Ethics and Public Policy Center study showed, was that this is so dangerous. We were sold a lie. Well, I don't know that any of us believed it in terms of the Catholic population or common sense folks, but we were sold a lie that it was as safe as Tylenol. And what the FDA did was another sleight of hand with the data. And we've seen that Robert
as
Kennedy...
safe, wait a minute. I have to stop you there. I want you to repeat that. As safe as Tylenol. So, over-the-counter pain medication you take for aches and pains or a headache, it's equal to, is the same as Mifepristone. Are you kidding me?
Yes, and that's, I've never seen a study like the study that the the Ethics and Public Policy Center put out with the data that they did. The danger, there's 11% of these, the times that this was used resulted in sepsis, in hemorrhages, in hospitalization. I have never seen 11% of Tylenol patients hospitalized for use of Tylenol. This is really blatant politicization of the medicine. And again, they did a sleight of hand with the data. What did they do? They only compared the deaths of Tylenol with the deaths of the abortion pill. And of course, not counting the deaths of the child, but just of the women and girls who took it. So this was a very blatant politicization of the Biden administration to say, it's safer than Tylenol. But fast forward to 2023, finally a U.S. district judge called it like it is, and they said that the FDA's process was flawed. And another panel of judges agreed. They didn't ban the drug, but they said at least it should not be sent by mail, not prescribed through telemedicine, require in-person visits. But then, of course, as we've seen with a lot of issues in our nation right now, another judge came along and said, wait a minute, these rules are creating access barriers. And so they rolled the restrictions back again. And now we have this science that's saying, we simply cannot go on with this being less regulated than antidiarrheals like Lomotil or Motofin. We don't even let people get over-the-counter Sudafed in some instances because we're worried about what teenagers or other actors will do with it. And so the idea that this is going to be less regulated than those drugs, the science just doesn't bear it out.
How much of this is related to the bottom line? Because they know, the industry, the abortion industry knows that it's getting more and more difficult. Word is getting out there, especially with the last election, that even if people call themselves pro-choice, they want limits, a lot of limits on abortion. And they know they're losing support, but they need the money. And this is a quick fix in terms of the dollar, right?
Yeah, they do. They do need the money, and I think that we've seen that there's a lot of corruption in healthcare related back to these financial incentives, and yet I think that the perversion here is really intensely political, more than it is financial.
That's a good point.
This is something that just no honest researcher and statistician can respond to the fact that there's 11% of women are experiencing these complications like hemorrhage, sepsis, surgery, hospitalization. That's 22 times higher than the FDA's claimed rate.
Look at Abby Johnson's experience in her book, right? Unplanned. And she talks about that in the book, and we saw it in the film in terms of what she suffered when she took the abortion pill. It is such a lie, Kelsey. It's so political, but they just lie completely. And women, their health is being greatly affected in the course of lives of the children.
Well, and you've pointed out such a great point. A lot of these women, when they take this pill, they experience a great deal of shame around the procedure. They're at home having sepsis, having hemorrhage, and they're afraid to call into their doctor, and these complications, worsen because, they're embarrassed what they've done. People don't know that there's an abortion pill reversal procedure out there, which I think is really important to proclaim, and that's experienced a lot of censorship on online and whatnot. But there's so much harm that's happening to women, and it's really happening in these in the privacy of their homes, where they're afraid to even admit to themselves that this is so dangerous, or they don't have the medical capacity to recognize that they shouldn't be bleeding to the extent that they are, and so this pill is dastardly. It is so devastating for women and girls.
Yeah. And also then the home becomes, the place of the trauma. It's bad enough when women have that experience at an abortion facility, but then the home becomes a place of the trauma, and so they have this ongoing psychological fallout and spiritual fallout because of what happened. I mean, this is just so ridiculous. The abortion pill is equal to Tylenol. Yeah, we were born, but not yesterday. Give me a break. More with Kelsey Reinhardt, president of Catholic Vote, talking about information coming out on Mifepristone, the review, and also what we can do about it, what we should be doing. We certainly need to educate ourselves on this and what they've been trying to sell us for so many years. We'll be right back. Minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Thinking about our beautiful gospel for this weekend on Sunday, the Good Samaritan, and how the Lord tells the man of the law, kind of turns everything on its head. And the Pope talked about this in his homily on Sunday, and so did our associate pastor. And I discussed this in 2 Cents yesterday in the second hour of the program. The Lord doesn't give the man of the law an exact answer as to, okay, well, who is my neighbor? The man of the law wanted to justify himself, and Scripture even uses that phrase. He wanted to justify himself, and he asked a question of Jesus. And so he was expecting a list. Okay, this person is your neighbor. This person is your neighbor. This person is your neighbor. So if you cover all these people, you got your nice little box, and you're good to go. But what the Lord turned it on him and said, he asked him, who's best served? The man on the road who was obviously beaten and needed help. And the response was the Good Samaritan. So what Jesus was asking, he's asking us the same thing. And it gets to what we're talking about this morning, both with Bill Donahue and with our interview right now with Kelsey. God is asking us to keep our eyes open, and that we have to do the work and say, okay, well, who's my brother and sister? Who's my neighbor? And what do I need to do? In addition to, obviously, being pro-life and supporting the unborn, women in, of course, unplanned pregnancies, women who find themselves in very difficult situations, including the elderly, of course, all of these issues. But at the same time, it's broader than that. God is asking us, and the Pope said this too, to work at this and to recognize needs. And this issue that we're talking about right now, as Kelsey has so eloquently been explaining for us from the Catholic Vote, this push of the abortion pill, it's up to us to understand what's happening here. It is very political, but the women who find themselves in desperate situations and don't know that there's help out there, don't know about the local pregnancy resource center, don't know that the abortion pill can be reversed, it's up to us to see these women as our neighbors and to give them the information and to support the pregnancy resource centers and the pro-life doctors in the communities to make sure they have that information. Think about how ridiculous this is. Putting information out there that this pill is equal to any types of complications with Tylenol. Are you kidding me? This is just it's so frustrating to me that they've been able to get away with this kind of nonsense for decades. That's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, Extreme Makeover, because I was so fed up as a woman when I started to finally study the church teaching and see and do the research on what was going on with the industry of abortion and the culture of death. I was like, basta, enough already. Anyhow, Kelsey, I just had to get that on my system. I'm Italian, and I had to say those things because it's all true. Right, sister?
It is all true. It is all true. I mean, mifepristone is a chemical that interferes with progesterone, which is a natural hormone necessary for a healthy pregnancy. It's still banned in several countries. And, I think you're absolutely right. Pregnancy isn't a disease. It doesn't need to be treated. There are a lot of lies going on in this whole field. And I'll point out too, Teresa, that 63% of abortions, according to the the Guttmacher Institute, are through the abortion pill. So, this is really important for people to be educated and informed on this. And I think also, to take action. And the Ethics and Public Policy Center is seeking public comments on 3 pending FDA citizen petitions. They're all from the left, all seeking to remove any restrictions on abortion drugs. And people can go to their website and submit comments on all of them. I think that's a great thing to do in addition to everything that you've just mentioned, supporting pregnancy resource centers, helping women, letting them know that there is an abortion pill reversal.
I'm really praying for, we were talking about this during the break, for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's done some very good things in terms of our health and food and the quality of medicine and whatnot. He was at least willing to review this, which is huge, even though he says, and he admitted this during the campaign, that he considers himself pro-choice, but he's rolled it back, and I just think that we just really need to pray for him, because at least he was willing to make sure this was happening, which is super important, and I think that's a real positive sign. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. This is a very positive sign, and what happens now, the FDA decides what's next, and the fight isn't over. If they keep the current rules, pro-lifers will challenge it. If they tighten the regulations, the abortion lobby will sue. So eventually, Teresa, I think what we're going to see is that this will land back at the Supreme Court. Only this time, the Supreme Court will have the science. And I think that this is going to be, one of those cases where upon reviewing data like what the Ethics and Public Policy has put together, it's going to be very difficult for them to make a convincing case that this is not just pushing politics to have this drug approved.
Absolutely. Talking with Kelsey Reinhardt, the president of Catholic Vote. Do we know, Kelsey, how long this review process with the FDA commissioner is? I mean, is it ongoing? Are you expecting to hear anything soon? What's the latest with that?
We don't know how long it's going to take, and I think that's part of this is I haven't the study hasn't been peer reviewed, and so he's going to have his data persons go all the way through this and take a look at everything that's been aggregated and shown to be the case. So I think it should be some matter of time, but we're a little bit unclear of the timeline at this moment.
Okay, but at least it's being reviewed, which is super important. And you mentioned the petition. Where do they find the petitions? At the Ethics and Policy website?
You can go to the Ethics and Public Policy website for that petition. As I mentioned, there's 3 of them, and they're all citizen petitions that allow you to submit comment and weigh in on where these regulations are going. Rep. Andy Harris also has something in the House, and he's attempting to again just side with people that this really needs to be reviewed. We need to at least go back to where this drug was in 2000, requiring an in-person visit, requiring all of the extra protections around it, and certainly we want the whole thing to be removed at one point. But as I say, there's very little outcomes that have this not ending in the Supreme Court because of what's at stake here. So I do think that if we see even the rollback to 2000, this will end up in court again and then push its way up to the Supreme Court.
Do you think more people are becoming aware of the situation and how we have been lied to, for so many years? The abortion industry across the board, it's ridiculous in terms of what they sold the American people, especially women. Do you think people are beginning to wake up to that?
I do think people are beginning to wake up to that. And I will say this about Robert Kennedy. He has done so much in this MAHA movement, and the women in the MAHA movement have done so much to really say, we need to take an honest look at what's happening here with our drugs, and there is a real in food safety standards and all sorts of other things that affect health. There's a real cultural component to these pieces. Moms who want to shop for foods free of red dye, had to put so much extra money and intentionality into it, and now, based upon what happened yesterday, all ice cream manufacturers are removing food coloring dyes. So I do think that there's a huge cultural component to this, that these shifts, when they happen at the bigger and larger levels, after a significant portion of the population has kind of awoken to the truth, they gain a lot of steam, and I think we're seeing that in the pro-life movement. There is so much momentum, and we see with the defunding of Planned Parenthood, more closures happening. We're really excited about where things are going in that direction. It's actually gaining a really terminal velocity here, and we just need to think creatively about how to advance on some of these new fronts, regarding mifepristone and the abortion pill and others.
I do think that even though it's only for a year, and we've been talking about this a lot with experts such as yourself and also with Lewis Brown from Christ Medicus, even though it's only for a year, it does make a huge statement. And I think getting the word out about how much money Planned Parenthood has been receiving, compliments of us, as in the taxpayers. That is eye-opening for people. Just that because most people don't even know how much money they get from the government. And I mean, they don't even know how much money they make in addition to how much money they get from the government each year. So getting that out there, this whole education effort, Kelsey, I think is so important.
Yeah, let them fund themselves. And even though this provision right now is for 1 year, Catholic Vote is committed to fighting to make this, to extend this. And I will say that, the closures are real. When a 1 year deficit or a 1 year, impact forces them to close an office, that's not going to reopen next year if the funding returns. And we'll be there to fight to make sure that doesn't happen.
I pulled up the report, and we did a story on this when this first came out because it's dated April 28, 2025, and people can find it at eppc.org, Kelsey, in addition to the petitions that you mentioned. But even if you just read the summary notes, that alone is just chilling. As you mentioned, you say nearly 11% of women experience sepsis, infection, hemorrhaging, or other serious adverse events within 45 days following a mifepristone abortion. The real-world rate of serious adverse effects following the drug is at least 22 times as high as a summary figure of less than 0.5% in clinical trials reported on the drug label. And then they're saying the FDA should further investigate the harm mifepristone causes to women and based on objective safety criteria, reconsider its approval altogether. And you can go through this summary. It's not that long. And their key findings. This is what I was talking about when we started this segment. This is part of what our Lord is telling us. We have to educate ourselves. We have to open our eyes. We have to realize what the heck has been going on with this abortion industry. It is nothing but lies and politics, and it's utterly disgusting and evil. It's a culture of death all over the place. I just get so upset when I see stories like this. I just can't help it because we've been lied to.
Focus on those numbers. 0.5% of women, they claim. 0.5%. 22 times higher. I mean, and then you have to really, in your mind, in your imagination, inform your morality and give it a real big, impetus to do something, because those stories of sepsis and hemorrhaging, you've got to think about the woman on the floor of her bathroom, literally on the edge of something incredibly serious that could lead to death. These are the real stories behind what this data is telling us. And that's what the abortion lobby has hidden. And, serious researchers have been raising alarm bells for years. The Charlotte Lozier Institute consistently pointed out that there was no credible scientific study comparing abortion pills to Tylenol. They said that the FDA only looked at death rates, not serious complications like sepsis or hemorrhage. That's how they did their sleight of hand with the data. And the comparison is nonsense. I mean, Tylenol deaths involve overuse or misuse, while abortion drug complications happen under medical supervision.
Right.
So the abortion industry has never answered these points, and they're going to be held accountable.
Well, they haven't had to because none of the media ask those questions. That's the problem. That's a big part of the problem. The media cover for them just like they cover for other people on the left in the culture of death. And they should be doing their homework with this kind of thing. They should be all over this if they're so concerned, about women and women's rights. There's another section that's really important, and we touched on this briefly, Kelsey, in this report from the Ethics and Public Policy Center, the increasing market share of chemical abortion. That's a huge part of it. I mean, you mentioned politics, but I think they're pretty close together here because they know that they can make a lot of money with this thing without a lot of work.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, it's 63% of abortions right now.
63%.
63%. So follow the money and take a look at what's happening here. I think that the abortion industry is going to have a very hard time refuting this. The study actually, the sample size was 865,000 persons. And this is recent data, too, Teresa. It's 2017 to 2023. So, this is not the abortion pill from 20 years ago data that they studied.
Right. This is very recent.
This is going to be very hard to refute. And
Kelsey, thank you. We're out of time, but I can't thank you enough. Give us your website real quick, hon, so people can check out the great work at Catholic Vote.
Yes, CatholicVote.org, and sign up for our daily newsletter, The Loop, to stay informed on all things politics and Catholicism.
God bless. We'll be right back.
If you have any questions about a program you heard today or maybe yesterday, or if you have a question about something we do here at Catholic Radio, just give us a little note at EWTN.com. You can also find out some background information about the various programs. You can get updates on our radio and TV schedules. It's all there for you online. And remember, we are here to keep you connected to your Catholic faith. And as my dear, dear friend and Catholic radio colleague, Al Cresta always says, to help you remember to look at everything in our lives through the lenses of Scripture and the teachings of the Church. And remember what I always say, something I heard years ago, that our Catholic faith has to be everything to us. It has to come first. I'll never forget that. I heard a priest give a homily, and this was during one of the most contentious elections recently, and he said our Catholic faith shouldn't be a factor when we go into the voting booth. It should be the factor, because, again, we have to look at everything through the lenses of Scripture and the teachings of our one holy Catholic and Apostolic faith. Hope you enjoyed the program today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on Catholic Connection.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Coming to you from the amazing Grand Hotel, as we've been discussing the first hour of Catholic Connection on a Monday morning on Mackinac Island. And we continue our programming, but they literally, I was joking with my producer, took the cane and pulled me off the, well, not really with the cane, but they pulled me off the Grand Hotel ballroom stage because my friend, Steve Ray, is up in just about now, speaking to well over 300 people that gathered here for this beautiful event, which has become such a tradition, not just for people in Michigan. What we've noticed over the years is that we have people from all over the country. In the last few years, a lot of people from down south, Alabama and Texas, and are just marveling over the beauty of northern lower Michigan. So we'll continue our programming with the news and the weather for you in just a minute. And we are going to re-air in this hour of the program, After 2 Cents, revisiting an interview we did recently with Father Chris Alar, of course, from EWTN and the Marian Fathers. His book on the sacraments, Understanding the Sacraments, exploring the significance of the 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church, and it emphasizes their role as channels of God's grace. Now, the full title is Understanding the Sacraments, God's Grace Guaranteed. And the reason I wanted to re-air this interview with Father Chris is because the lovely Vanessa Denha-Garmo will be sitting in for me tomorrow as Deacon Dom and I head back down, which is about a 4.5-hour drive from northern lower Michigan, the very, very tip of the lower peninsula, down to the Detroit area. And we have to get off the island early, and so doing a live show tomorrow would not work because of the ferries, and they're at certain times, and it gets a little bit crazy and busy. So anyway, to make a long story longer, Vanessa Denha-Garmo will be doing part 2 with Father Chris on his beautiful book, Understanding the Sacraments. And I love this because Father Chris is so knowledgeable, but he's also very much like the Marian Fathers. Of course, he's the head of that order. He preaches mercy. He gives us the truth in love, and we need that. The world is just so full of lies, and God gives us the truth through the sacraments. So he explains it very, very well and very lovingly. So he will be with me today in re-airing the interview, and then tomorrow also with Vanessa Denha-Garmo as she fills in for me as we head back, God willing, from a beautiful weekend for our Grand Hotel Getaway. If you're interested in finding out more about not only the Grand Hotel, but the Grand Hotel Getaway, you can go to the corporate travel website, ctscentral.net, or just look at Grand Getaway. That's what we've called it. And, it started out, as we mentioned earlier, with just a few families that were gathering. They wanted to come up north. Friends of John Hale, the owner of Corporate Travel, he invited Deacon Dom and I. So we've been with this event since the very beginning. And it just became larger and larger. People heard about it, and they turned it into this amazing event. And Father Mike Schmitz is always a big part of it. The Grand Getaway. So anyway, fun thing to check out. Right now, though, on a Monday morning from Mackinac Island, we need to check the weather not only here in northern Michigan, but across the country for you. So we'll do that right now, and then we will check the news. Wildfire smoke from Canada continues to result in poor air quality from the upper Midwest into the Northeast. Dangerous heat and fire weather concerns continue for portions of the Four Corners region into the central Great Basin, and heavy rainfall and flash flooding are possible throughout the day today for the southeast part of the country. Right now, let's take a look at the news here on a Monday morning at just a few minutes past the hour. During the Mass for the Jubilee of Young People near Rome on Sunday, the Holy Father telling them that Jesus is their hope and encouraged them to adventure with him throughout their life and let him enlighten them. He acknowledged that there's a burning question in their hearts, a need for truth that cannot be ignored, leading us to ask ourselves, he said, what is true happiness? What is the true meaning of life? What can free us from being trapped in meaningless boredom and mediocrity? In recent days, the Holy Father also recalled the young people have had many beautiful experiences, adding that through all of this, you can grasp an important point. Namely, the fullness of our existence does not depend on what we store up, or as we heard in the Gospel, on what we possess. He added, aspire to great things, to holiness wherever you are. Do not settle for less. You will then see the light of the Gospel growing every day in you and around you. An estimated 1 million young people gathering near Rome for the Jubilee of Youth prayer vigil and for the overall Jubilee of Youth. Meanwhile, Thaddeus Jones from Vatican News tells us at the conclusion of the closing Mass for the Jubilee of Youth, the Holy Father remembered young people suffering the most serious evils caused by other human beings, mentioning specifically war-torn Gaza, Ukraine, and every land bloodied by war.
Just before the conclusion of the closing Mass of the Jubilee of Young People at Rome's Tor Vergata field, Pope Leo expressed his closeness and solidarity with young people suffering in Gaza, Ukraine, and all living in war-torn parts of the world.
In communion with Christ, our peace and hope for the world, we are closer than ever to young people who suffer the most serious evils, which are caused by other human beings. We are with the young people of Gaza. We are with the young people of Ukraine. With those of every land bloodied by war. My young brothers and sisters, you are the sign that a different world is possible, a world of fraternity and friendship, where conflicts are not resolved with weapons, but with dialogue.
The Pope also yesterday announcing the dates of the next World Youth Day to be held in Seoul, South Korea, August 3rd through 8th, 2027. He said after this Jubilee, the pilgrimage of hope of young people continues and will take us to Asia. He said in a message before praying the Angelus at the University of Rome, 10 miles east of Rome, where he had just celebrated Mass for 1 million participants from 146 countries. In other news, a manhunt continues in Montana for a suspect who gunned down 4 people in a bar. Police say 45-year-old Michael Brown is still on the loose after killing 4 people in the small mountain town of Anaconda. Authorities have found what they believe is his abandoned vehicle west of town. Police in the southwest part of the state are urging people to remain on high alert. And the White House economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, is explaining President Trump's move to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this following a weak jobs report. In an interview with Meet the Press over the weekend, he echoed statements made by the president questioning the accuracy of those numbers.
There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder, and I think the most important thing for people to know is that it's the president's highest priority that the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable.
The report said the economy added just 73,000 jobs last month, which is well below estimates. Trump taking to social media implying the labor statistics chief manipulated the information for political purposes. The Trump administration launching a probe against former special counsel Jack Smith. Smith prosecuted 2 cases against Trump, one centering around allegations that Trump tried to subvert the 2020 election, another accusing him of mishandling classified documents. Neither went to trial, and Smith resigned from the Justice Department shortly before Trump was inaugurated. Meanwhile, the president and the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, are set to speak in the coming days. That, according to Canadian Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who told CBS's Face the Nation that he's optimistic the 2 countries can reach a deal to reduce tariffs.
We think there is an option of striking a deal that will bring down some of these tariffs, provide greater certainty to investment.
His comments come after the president decided to raise tariffs to 35% on Canada following weeks of negotiations. The president citing the fentanyl crisis as a reason for the tariff hike, and he also mentioned Carney's efforts to recognize a Palestinian state was jeopardizing those talks. Jim Forbes tells us Jeanine Pirro is confirmed as the next U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia.
On Saturday, the Senate voted 50-45 to confirm Pirro to the position. Pirro was previously serving on an acting basis since May after President Trump withdrew his first nominee, Ed Martin, whose nomination faltered amid bipartisan backlash. She has previously served as both a judge and a district attorney in New York before co-hosting The Five on Fox News. I'm Jim Forbes.
And meanwhile, the feds are warning corporate America to do their due diligence to avoid worker fraud. The district attorney for Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, discussing a case earlier last week involving an Arizona woman who helped hundreds of North Korean IT workers illegally get remote jobs at American companies.
This is a code red. Your tech sectors are being infiltrated by North Korea.
She said that Christina Chapman enabled a network of North Korean workers to generate $17 million in revenue that went all the way back to North Korea. She went on to say it's time for businesses to verify their workers before security of the country is compromised. Almost 60% of millennials and Gen Zers blame their social life for hurting their financial goals. A new survey also found that 42% of them report overspending on their social budget several months out of the year. A survey also revealing that most American adults covet social time, with nearly 70% saying they meet with friends in person at least once a week. On average, they spend $250 a month on social activities. Fewer than 1 in 5 say they have a strict budget for activities with friends. And Sarah Lee Kessler tells us the Federal Trade Commission is warning consumers about a scam involving Amazon.
It actually has nothing to do with the international e-commerce company, but with fraudsters trying to make it look legit. They're sending phony text messages claiming to be from Amazon, saying an item you bought has been recalled. The FTC says don't fall for it. Don't click on the link offering a full refund, or you could be ripped off by scammers who are after your money and personal data. I'm Sarah Lee Kessler.
And there's a major wildfire still raging in central Utah after nearly 3 weeks. Officials say the Monroe Canyon fire began on July 13th and has grown now to some 57,000 acres. Crews on the ground and tanker aircraft have helped slow the spread, but the blaze is less than 5% contained. Local evacuation orders lifted on Friday, although the state of emergency declared by the governor is still in effect. And finally, in our newscast on a Monday morning, Rob Martio tells us a theme park made famous by its A-list celebrity co-founder hitting the top spot on TripAdvisor's 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards.
Dollywood, the park co-founded by country music icon Dolly Parton, placed highest in the Best Amusement Park category. Dollywood beat out Disney World's Magic Kingdom, Disneyland, and Universal Studios on the 2025 list. TripAdvisor says the ranking is decided by above and beyond reviews and opinions from the TripAdvisor community over a 12-month period. When it comes to the best theme parks globally, Dollywood comes in at number 11 on the list. The number 1 theme park on the face of the planet, Ferrari World, Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. I'm Rob Martier.
It's a Monday morning, and we are still here at the Grand Hotel, but stay tuned for some more great programming on a Monday. We'll be right back. It's a Monday, June 16th, 2025. Great to be with you here on EWTN's Catholic Connection, the second hour of the program on EWTN Radio Extra. You can also hear us, of course, on the app. For all the information on all of our great programming, EWTN.com. I thought since we have the time and 2 cents, and instead of hearing from me, it would be great if you could hear from our Holy Father, especially since many of us are busy and we may not have had time to actually sit down or follow the coverage or listen to the entire statement that he gave, beautiful video message that he gave for Saturday. So imagine the people gathering there in the White Sox home field, right field, right? Thousands of people were there on Saturday. And they're realizing, most of them probably from the Chicago area, that the Pope of the worldwide Catholic Church is a hometown boy. I think people are still trying to take all that in. And then they're going to get a personal message from him. He wasn't there in person, but he did deliver a beautiful message, which is, by the way, found on the Vatican website, and we also have links to it as well in our various news outlets. And it was so powerful, especially encouraging people, young people in particular, to come back to the church. So let's take a listen. This is the Holy Father's video message, audio obviously, given to the crowds that gathered on Saturday for a very special celebration. There was a beautiful mass, and there were all kinds of other events. They were celebrating the election of Pope Leo XIV, a native of Chicago.
My dear friends, it's a pleasure for me to greet all of you gathered together at White Sox Park on this great celebration as a community of faith in the Archdiocese of Chicago. A special greeting to Cardinal Supich, to the auxiliary bishops, to all my friends who are gathered today on this, the Feast of the Most Holy Trinity. And I begin with that because the Trinity is a model of God's love for us. God, Father, Son, and Spirit, three persons in one God, live united in the depth of love, in community, sharing that communion with all of us. So as you gather today in this great celebration, I want to both express my gratitude to you and also an encouragement to continue to build up community, friendship as brothers and sisters in your daily lives, in your families, in your parishes, in the Archdiocese, and throughout our world. I'd like to send a special word of greeting to all the young people, those of you gathered together today, and many of you who are perhaps watching this greeting through technological means on the internet. As you grow up together, you may realize, especially having lived through the time of the pandemic, times of isolation, of great difficulty, sometimes even difficulties in your families, in our world today. Sometimes it may be that the context of your life has not given you the opportunity to live the faith, to live as participants in a faith community. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite each one of you to look into your own hearts, to recognize that God is present and that perhaps in many different ways, God is reaching out to you, calling you, inviting you to know His Son, Jesus Christ, through the Scriptures, perhaps through a friend or a relative, a grandparent who might be a person of faith, but to discover how important it is for each one of us to pay attention to the presence of God in our own hearts, to that longing for love in our lives, for searching, a true searching, for finding the ways that we may be able to do something with our own lives to serve others. And in that service to others, we may find that coming together in friendship, building up community, we too can find true meaning in our lives. Moments of anxiety, of loneliness, so many people who suffer from different experiences of depression or sadness, they can discover that the love of God is truly healing, that it brings hope, and that actually coming together as friends, as brothers and sisters in community, in a parish, in an experience of living our faith together, we can find that the Lord's grace, that the love of God can truly heal us can give us the strength that we need, can be the source of that hope that we all need in our lives. To share that message of hope with one another in outreach, in service, and looking for ways to make our world a better place gives true life to all of us, and is a sign of hope for the whole world. To, once again, the young people who are gathered here, I'd like to say that you are the promise of hope for so many of us. The world looks to you as you look around yourselves and says, we need you. We want you to come together to share with us in this common mission as church and in the society of announcing a message of true hope and of promoting peace, promoting harmony among all peoples. We have to look beyond our own, if you will, egotistical ways. We have to look for ways of coming together and promoting a message of hope. St. Augustine says to us that if we want the world to be a better place, we have to begin with ourselves. We have to begin with our own lives, our own hearts. And so in this sense, as you gather together as a faith community, as you celebrate in the Archdiocese of Chicago, as you offer your own experience of joy and of hope, you can find out, you can discover that you too are indeed beacons of hope, that light that perhaps on the horizon is not very easy to see, and yet as we grow in our unity, as we come together in communion, we can discover that that light will grow brighter and brighter, that light which is indeed our faith in Jesus Christ, and we can become that message of hope to promote peace and unity throughout our world. We all live with many questions in our hearts. St. Augustine speaks so often of our restless hearts and says, our hearts are restless until they rest in you, O God. That restlessness is not a bad thing, and we shouldn't look for ways to put out the fire, to eliminate or even numb ourselves to the tensions that we feel, the difficulties that we experience. We should rather get in touch with our own hearts and recognize that God can work in our lives, and through us, reach out to other people. And so I'd like to conclude this brief message to all of you with an invitation to be, indeed, that light of hope. Hope does not disappoint, St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Romans. When I see each and every one of you, when I see how people gather together to celebrate their faith, I discover myself how much hope there is in the world. In this Jubilee year of hope, Christ, who is our hope, indeed calls all of us to come together that we might be that true living example of the light of hope in the world today. So I would like to invite all of you to take a moment to open up your own hearts to God, to God's love, to that peace which only the Lord can give us, to feel how deeply beautiful, how strong, how meaningful the love of God is in our lives, and to recognize that while we do nothing to earn God's love, God, in His own generosity, continues to pour out His love upon us. And as He gives us His love, He only asks us to be generous and to share what He has given us with others. May you indeed be blessed as you gather together for this celebration. May the Lord's love and peace come upon each and every one of you, upon your families, and may God bless all of you so that you might always be beacons of hope, sign of hope and peace throughout our world. And may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit come upon you and remain with you always. Amen.
Amen. Isn't that beautiful? Our Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, his video message to those gathered over the weekend at the White Sox baseball field in the Archdiocese of Chicago, where they had a beautiful celebration for their hometown boy. Of course, Pope Leo XIV, born and raised in the Chicago area. And what a blessing he is, not just to Chicago, but to all of us. We'll be right back. We're going to talk radio and also how Catholic radio is making a difference beyond the airwaves. Yes, we are. We'll explain. 27 minutes past the hour. It is a Tuesday morning. Thanks for tuning in to Catholic Connection on the EWTN radio network. We're working on... Oh, we have Father Chris. Okay, great. Vanessa Denha-Garmo hung on in case we didn't get Father Chris because there's so much to talk about in the media. But V, we appreciate you, and we will have you back on again very, very soon. Always great to catch up with our friend, Father Chris Alar. Of course, you know him well from his great work, of course, on Divine Mercy and also on EWTN. And Father Chris has a brand new book out that we want to talk about this morning, Understanding the Sacraments, God's Grace Guaranteed. Hey, Father, how are you?
Good morning, Teresa. Always nice to have a chance to speak with you.
Well, I love talking about the sacraments because I think obviously they're so important, but sometimes I think as Catholics we tend to take them for granted. So why did you decide to write this book about the sacraments, Father?
You are 100% correct. This is what makes our faith different from every other Christian denomination, 45,000 other religions, and only the Catholic Church, and of course the Orthodox have valid sacraments, but not being under Rome anymore puts really the focus on the Catholic Church for the full grace. And God can work grace any way he wishes, but it's only guaranteed to us through the sacraments. Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. We take it for granted. Mm-hmm. We don't bother going to confession, but every few years, if at all. We receive the Eucharist like it's just going through the motion. We don't think about sometimes calling a priest to do the anointing. Marriage, Catholics are being married now outside the church on a regular basis, not even thinking about it. We don't understand the role of the priesthood. And certainly the most important of all of them, baptism. We're not even baptizing our babies. So these are important things that we must know and understand.
So what do you think has happened over the years, Father, in terms of a lack of interest in the sacraments? I mean, there's so many different ways we could go with this in terms of the culture seeping in. But it's so sad because Deacon Dom says the same thing. I mean, even with weddings, we don't have that many weddings anymore. I remember when we were in marriage prep, we were working with couples, and we were very, very busy. There were marriages, it seemed like, every single weekend. Not so much anymore.
No, and that's the thing. I point to the two things that priests tell me. Priests used to tell me that they used to have hundreds of baptisms and weddings in their parishes every year. One priest was just telling me last year he had 7 baptisms and 3 weddings or something like that. It's shocking that I believe, Teresa, honestly, the world is in the mess that it is. Here's an interesting fact. The average age of the world leader today is between 45 and 60. Now, when did we stop baptizing our babies? Exactly 45 to 60 years ago after Vatican II. And that's when we stopped baptizing our babies. The world leaders do not have the protection of the Holy Spirit. And when you're not baptized, you're wide open to the influence and the attacks of the evil one. And these are very dangerous if we don't make ourselves aware of that and start baptizing our children again.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the themes in the book, because I think this would be a great guide, Father, and I'm sure you wrote it for a number of reasons, but I think this would be great for people who are in OCIA, teaching OCIA, for people who are in any type of evangelization at their parish. I think it's super, super important to have this book as a guide and to give it to people to hand out, because you go over the basics. Let's start with why we baptize infants. It's always been a challenge. If you look at anti-Catholic fundamentalists, they talk about this age of reason, and yet they forget one of my favorite scripture verses or scripture scenes is when they bring the crippled man to Jesus, and they're so worried about him when he's preaching up in Capernaum that they bring him up and they put him down through the roof, and Jesus says, "Your faith has basically saved him." Your faith, not his faith.
It wasn't the faith of the man on the mat. It was the people on the roof.
Right. So let's talk about that. Why do we baptize infants?
Okay, first of all, this is what people don't understand. First of all, when you have a child, everybody says today, well, not everybody, but many say, I'll let my child grow up to be 18 years old and then make the decision if they want to be baptized. Well, here's the thing. You didn't have your child and say, I'll wait for them to become 18 before they decide if they want to be a member of our family or not. They were a member of your family from the day they were conceived. They didn't make the choice to be a member of your family. And so why are you going to say they should make a choice at 18 to be a member of God's family? God's will is that they be a member of his family, just like you had the child a member of your family before they were 18. You didn't say they're going to be 18 before they become a member of your family. They were a member of your family from the beginning. Now, here's what's interesting. Peter, in Acts, this is scriptural, Acts chapter 2, verse 38, Peter said, repent and be baptized, every one of you. He says, for the promise is to you and your children. Mm-hmm. And St. Augustine taught the custom of Mother Church in baptizing infants is not to be scorned, but it is apostolic. And here's a good one. This is one of my favorites. 1,000 years, way more than 1,000 years before the first Protestant church, we had the apostolic tradition. This is around AD 215. And it says, baptize first the children. And if they can speak for themselves, let them do so. Otherwise, let their parents or other relatives speak for them. And I think of the four men and the paralytic, just like you said. The four men spoke for that man on the mats. And that's what we're doing for our children.
Also, you see I believe it's in Acts, where you see when the whole households are baptized, right? So if there's a household, then you know there had to be children and probably even infants in that household.
Yeah. In fact, Stephanus, was it Paul says, I baptized. Oh, yeah, Paul. This was the 1 Corinthians 1:16. Paul said, I baptized the entire household of Stephanus. Mm-hmm. So there's no doubt that the early church practiced infant baptism. In fact, there was no objections to it until the Reformation. So very important.
When we come back, Father, I have to take a break in about a minute, but I want to talk about, you mentioned something that's super important. We don't realize what we're doing if we don't protect ourselves with the grace of the sacraments. We're opening ourselves up to all kinds of things. And we don't realize also when we are going onto the internet, and even if accidentally we're not looking up, something that is demonic or whatever it may be, those kinds of forces, if we are not protected by prayer through the grace of the sacraments, this is very serious stuff. This isn't just like, oh, it's a symbol, it's just something we do, we get baptized, we get confirmed, and we get married in the church, blah, blah, blah. God gives us these sacraments for very specific reasons, for us to grow in our faith, but also to protect us from various evils out there. Having a great conversation with our friend, of course, from EWTN and his great work with the Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception, where he serves as a provincial superior of that beautiful order. And his book is all about the sacraments, and he was recently featured, of course, on Bookmark with our very own Doug Keck. You need to get a copy of this book quickly. Understanding the Sacraments, God's Grace Guaranteed. More with Father Chris when we come back. Of course, our friend Father Chris is a host of our very own show, Living Divine Mercy. He has a very long bio. You can look him up at the Marians, because otherwise, if I read his bio, we'll just take up the whole time because it's so extensive. But he is a provincial superior of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of Mercy, province of the Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception, both in the U.S., England, as well as Argentina. And his beautiful book is so important. And I would encourage everyone to get a copy of this. Just, I think, Father, too, as a refresher for our own knowledge and affirmation regarding practicing the sacraments and making sure we understand them fully. The book is Understanding the Sacraments, God's Grace Guaranteed. We were talking before the break and then during the break, Father, about the evils out there online. And you said you had a very interesting and kind of frightening conversation with an exorcist about the internet and pornography in particular. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we know that the eyes are a window to the soul. And so Satan is obviously going to try to get a portal into any soul he can. So sometimes God forces the demons to tell the truth. And during an exorcism, a demon was forced to tell the truth and stated that behind every image of pornography in a magazine or on the internet is placed a demon. The demon had stated that a demon is placed behind it so that when the eye is open to it, there's an open portal for that demon to enter. And that's why you see so many lives controlled by the demons of lust. Tradition says the biggest struggle for men is lust, and for women is pride. And so Satan knows this, and he's placing all these demons behind these images of pornography. So when they look, the eye is the window to the soul. It's open. And, Teresa, in confession now, we used to think of pornography just a man thing. I'm hearing it a lot from women now. And so the eyes being the portal to the soul is affecting men and women, and now even children. It's that pervasive.
Are we becoming more aware, do you think, of those issues? I mean, because there are many marriages and relationships and people that have been really, just ravaged by pornography.
Yeah. In fact, luckily we are, but the thing is, there's still a continuation of it. In fact, even though there are couples that I've counseled that are fully aware of it, the man just claims he can't break away. He just can't break away. With the grace of God, you can. And that is why the sacraments are so important, because they are the only guaranteed way to get grace. There's no other guaranteed way. Yes, you can pray. We can go to our own room. This is a start. But the only way, ex opere operato, in the very fact that the sacrament is given and administered, you are receiving. The sacraments are not just symbols. They do something. They're actual grace. They're the cause, the effective cause of grace. And so remember our definition, Teresa, is a sacrament is an efficacious sign, meaning it does something, of God's grace instituted by Christ and trusted to the church, by which divine life is instilled in us. I can't emphasize enough, and the reason I wrote this book is because I just assumed Catholics knew the sacraments, what they were, and how important that we need them. But we don't. People are not getting married in the church. They're not baptizing their babies. They're not going to confession. It's sad, and this is what we must wake up to realize. This is God's answer to the evil, that we need protection.
It's heartbreaking to me on so many levels, especially the marriage issue, because the reason, and I know this working, my husband, as you know, has been a deacon for almost 13 years now. When you talk to people as to why aren't you getting married in the church? Well, it's too inconvenient. We want to get married quickly. We want to get married on a beach. You want to do this.
Yeah.
They're looking at the exterior, the imagery, the reception. They're not looking at the long term. What they don't realize is how they're not entering that marriage with the very, very best support they could possibly get.
Yeah, and it's the key for you must have canonical form. If you are a baptized Catholic, you must be married in the Catholic Church. And this is not a punishment. This is not just to be inconvenienced. It is because this is what Christ gave us in the gift of the church. And if we're not married in the church as a baptized Catholic, we are living in an invalid marriage, and thus the relations are adulterous. You're not married, and therefore you're engaging in sin. And a lot of people come to me, Father, can I go to my daughter's same-sex marriage in the Justice of the Peace? Can I go to my brother's wedding on the beach? Unfortunately, and this is so hard for me to say as a priest, and my heart breaks every time I have to say this, but no, you cannot. Mm-hmm. And they say, why, Father? And the answer is because then you are condoning a life of sin that this couple is now preparing to be engaged in. Yeah. And you're celebrating a life now of sinful relations. And that is very detrimental to their salvation, if not the cause of their salvation. And if you really love them, you don't want that. There's nothing more important, not their feelings, not their emotions, their salvation. And that is why we have to explain to our loved ones that we can't come. And I know so many people find that so hard. And I understand that. I do. But what's most important when you love someone is willing they're good. And they need to be married sacramentally, not just legally. And that's why a legal marriage exists, but not a sacramental marriage.
Yeah. And you can love them, obviously, but doesn't mean you have to agree with them or endorse what they're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah. If your child was going to now participate in an event that made their life turn to sin, you wouldn't go celebrate that. If a child was making a choice and was entering into something that was leading them to a life of sin, you wouldn't be partaking. You would tell them you can't. And it's the same with marriage for a baptized Catholic outside the church.
What is really, I think, frustrating for me, and knowing, because you know our story, Deacon Dom and I, our marriage was healed. We were married in the Catholic Church, thanks be to God. At least we had enough common sense to do that. But and I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to stay together and push through and work on our marriage. But with all the stories out there, with all the studies, with all the research, and how many marriages are breaking up, all the issues, this is what I tell people: why wouldn't you want to start out the right way to help you, to give you that right start right out the gate? Before you go off and into the sunset to begin your relationship, you need the grace.
Yeah. In fact, one point I make in the book, Teresa, is that there's only one word that gets us to heaven. There's only one thing. There's only one thing, and everybody, says this or that. The answer is God's grace. Mm-hmm. And when we cooperate with it through love and then receive His mercy, it's realized. But grace from God is the one thing that gets us to heaven. And if we're not married inside the church to get that grace of God to bless the marriage, and we're living in an adulterous relationship, we have no protection.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of people say, well, Father, the church is giving out too many annulments. And my answer is always, no, the church isn't giving out too many annulments. The church is giving out too many marriages, because people who even are married in the Catholic Church don't understand what marriage means. I'll give you an example. I have a good friend. She was just married in another state, and I talked to her like a month after their marriage. And it was in a Catholic church, so even those can be problematic, because I talked to her a month afterwards, and she says, oh, yeah, myself and my husband, we agree we're never having children. We will never, ever have children. Well, that marriage is invalid.
Right.
That marriage is invalid because they're not at least open to the gift of life, should God give them that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my fear is, I'm pleading with them, please, you have to be open and don't let something end in abortion. And yet this is the mindset today.
Well, you have to be, the teaching is very clear. You have to be open to the grace of life. If you don't have children, if you don't conceive, and it's very, very specific. And this is something that Deacon Dom and I went through, because we couldn't have children. But then we decided, after prayer and going to talk to spiritual direction, that if you are not going to adopt, then you need to sacrifice and give your life to the church. So that's what we decided to do. So there's a difference between just saying, okay, well, I can't have children, so I'm going to adopt. There is a decision you have to make, and you have to live sacrificially for the church. And that's not taught either. That's not taught, Father, either, I think.
That's powerful. And you know what? You're right. How many people actually know that, and second, are willing to accept it?
Right.
Yeah.
But see, this is why this is so important. I want to move quickly. You only have about 4 minutes left, to the Eucharist, the source and summit of our faith. I think, unfortunately, that is something else that we take for granted. That's why one of the reasons that Deacon Dom and I are so big into promoting pilgrimage and taking people to Orvieto or Lanciano, because this is real. The Eucharist is God.
Yeah, and people say, oh, well, Father, he was speaking figuratively. First of all, John 6, Christ spoke in Aramaic, and he said to eat the flesh and drink his blood. Now, if he was speaking figuratively, or it's an expression, yes, there is an expression in Aramaic to eat the flesh and drink the blood of someone, but it meant to persecute them or assault them. Why would Jesus be offering this type of person eternal life? And so the word that's used is tragon, which in the Greek literally means to chew, to gnaw with your teeth. It is literal. And so this is so important that people don't realize it's real. People say, well, Father, my church down the street has Holy Communion. No, that's Wonder Bread and grape juice. It's a symbol, which they believe, but the sacrament is the effective cause of the grace. In 1 Corinthians 11, Paul says, if you eat this bread unworthily, you bring condemnation on yourself. Well, then it has to be more than a piece of bread, because you should see me eat a piece of pizza. It's very irreverent. I just wolf it down between my meetings, and I'm running off between my next meeting. That's because it's just a piece of bread. But if we're being commanded to eat it reverently, it has to be more than just a piece of bread.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand.
There's so much beauty in this, and there's so much we can learn, even if we believe that we're doing our best, and God willing, I know our listeners are there with us, but there's always something else to learn about the sacraments. That's why I'm so grateful that you did this book. Where do we get it, Father?
Okay, please, if you'd like to take the trouble to help our Marian community as much as possible, shopmercy.org, which is shopmercy.org. We then, as Marians, are able to put all those proceeds back into the building of our new monastery and for the education of our seminarians, which is what we're working on now, where we have a boom of new vocations. 10 new guys came this year to enter our community. We're bursting with vocations. It's unbelievable. It tells me the message of mercy is important. But if you prefer and it's easier, it is available on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon.com and type in Understanding the Sacraments, and it'll pull up there too. So
we also have it on the catalog too, the EWTN Religious Catalog.
Yes, a religious catalog.
Yep.
That's a big one. Please, in fact, that's probably the next best way to do it along with shopmercy.org, is on the religious catalogs site. And so praise be to God that it's offered there as well.
Father, great to catch up with you, fellow Michigander, my friend Father Chris Alar. Understanding the Sacraments, God's Grace Guaranteed. Father, we have to have you back on. There's so much more we didn't cover in this book, so let's do another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shows, because there's tons of material here. Our friend Father Chris Alar, his book, Understanding the Sacraments, God's Grace Guaranteed. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning into Catholic Connections, second hour on EWTN's Radio Extra on a Monday. We are still on Mackinac Island, beautiful Mackinac. And something to really check out is what we call the Mighty Mac, the Mackinac Bridge, which is such an amazing feat of engineering, but also a beautiful sight to behold. The Mackinac Bridge connects the Lower Peninsula of Michigan to the Upper Peninsula. And it is beyond incredible. And when you're on the porch of the Grand Hotel here, you look to the right and then you see this beautiful structure, the Mackinac Bridge, also known as the Mighty Mac. And, we talk a lot about the Gold Coast, and many people from the Chicago area and other areas of the Midwest are very familiar with Michigan's Gold Coast, which is Traverse City, Harbor Springs, Charlevoix, Petoskey, the Leelanau Peninsula, which has great wineries, by the way. But the Upper Peninsula is phenomenal, and you want to see God's beauty and some great maritime museums, go to we call it the UP, and just enjoy the beauty and the peace there, especially a beautiful place called the Tequamanon Falls. And go see Lake Superior, which is beyond gorgeous. And, the Great Lakes are so amazing because they're called the Great Lakes because they're like mini oceans. You can stand on the shores, whether it be Lake Huron or Lake Michigan or Lake Superior, or Lake Ontario or Lake Erie, and you can't see the other side. It's just so beautiful. Well, tomorrow, as I'm heading back, God willing, from Mackinac to Detroit, the lovely Vanessa Denha-Garmo will be sitting in for me again, and she will conclude an interview with Father Chris on his book on the sacraments, and she'll also have her coach's commentary and Newman Guide News talking about Cardinal Newman being named a doctor of the church. Stay tuned.